particularly for the McGuire group that I had the opportunity to go ahead and lead. And so many McGuire alumni are here with Bob Kinney. I can remember his briefings on sex, drugs, and rock and roll. He'll talk to you about that afterward if you would like. Just with you. John Howard, of course, who's a McGuire alum as well. We've known John throughout our career. Norm Hamm, who was my vice commander many years ago. Well, maybe not that many years ago. Not that old. But again, with old friends here, it's very nice. And of course, my vice commander at the time, Jack Hildebrand, who's here as well. So it's really a fun opportunity for me to be here to pay tribute to Kim. And, you know, there are a number of different things that you could say about her, but what I want to do is hit 3 different areas because it touches all reservists. A reservist has a family. A reservist has an employer. And a reservist actually has to have time for themselves as well. And so ultimately they have this 3-legged stool that they have to deal with. And when all 3 are equally mad at you, that's when you know you're doing something right. So ultimately, let's talk the first about the family. The family that Kim has is very marvelous and wonderful. Very supportive over the years. I can remember Eric, whenever he was just a little lad, asked me for my autograph, and that was unusual because the only time people wanted my autograph was either on a paid document or an OPR, an officer performance report. So it was very refreshing. So thank you, Eric, for that privilege of providing him with that. Emily, of course, was much smaller and just a lovely, shining young lady. And so I met Kim at a 42nd Combat Com cookout that they had, and they always had wonderful family events. And so it was really wonderful to see her family. Later on, Bernie comes along and is really enlightening her and rewarding her with her time and her love. And so it's wonderful to see that. And I know Kim cherishes that as well. Her family, her sisters actually, have been there to help her out as well and support her. Sue, I know she really is going to appreciate what you're going to do for her here later as you talk about her career. And Roz, I know also that you are a big part of this ceremony as well. And so thanks to you, your sisters, and your families, your husbands and your children as well, as a support network. Because again, it is very difficult to go ahead and do the job that she needs to do. Without the support of her family, she could not do that. And Kim has had a very outstanding career. Let me talk about that from the military side. Started out as a second lieutenant, not necessarily in the Air Force, Army reservist, and as a medical person. And so she came in as a medical officer, second lieutenant, at that time, Wilton. And so she started her career in the Army. And it was in Delaware, actually. It wasn't necessarily in the state of New Jersey, but it was in and around the Pennsylvania area, so it was close. Started in Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware, and so she was a second lieutenant. Did a great job there. And she started her career always as an athletic woman, always in charge of the PT program, always pushing the PT program because she's physically fit. And so she was a part of their aerobics program, building it up, making sure all those Army officers and enlisted were fit and ready to go and fight the battles. Early on, she was mobilized. And in fact, spent a tour at Fort Dix early in her career, very shortly after she was a second lieutenant, and worked there at Fort Dix for a short time. And I guess the influence of Fort Dix, McGuire was right there, kind of had a pull for it. Took a while, but eventually she, in 1995, came to the light side. She saw that, hey, this Army stuff isn't necessarily what it really should be, and so I think I ought to go and do this Air Force thing. Doing the same thing in the medical world, but coming to the 722nd Aeromedical Staging Squadron up in New York, Fort Hamilton. And so she starts her Air Force Reserve career, but it wasn't very long. I guess really that pull from Fort Dix and McGuire was really attractive. And she didn't really like that New York style, so she had to come down to McGuire to acquire that McGuire desire. And so she started off in the 514th Aeromedical Staging Squadron, still doing the same thing as a medical officer. But at this time, she thought, hey, this medical stuff probably isn't really where I want to go. I want to become a line officer. And so she does. And now First Lieutenant Roden is a line officer. And about that time, Captain comes along as well. She moves to the 78th Air Refueling Squadron. She's a flight management and executive officer over there. That's where it's happening. That's where the operators are. There's where guys like, you know, John Howlett are over there, and Jim Scanlon over there with those air refuelers. She had to smack them down because they get a little out of line. And she did, actually, I'm sure. Even as a young captain, I'm sure she did. And so she basically started her line officer career. And what a great one it was. She deployed to Al Ghafra, actually was an assistant ops officer while she was over there, working the flying game.